Hey yo, all you economic students out there. Today we are doing part 2 of the demand supply applications to the labor market. If you have not watched part 1, you should probably do so before continuing on this video. In part 1, we explained the wage gap between university graduates and non-university graduates. In part 2, we are explaining how this wage gap has increased over time. I'm borrowing answers that I already have in my book on model essays on the Singapore economy. The words, as you can see here, the diagrams are not labeled exactly as the context that we started off with in part 1, but it is convenient to use these answers, right? So basically over here, skilled labor market, this represents the university graduates. Here, unskilled labor market, it represents the non-university graduates. Okay, so non-university graduates aren't unskilled, all right, but we are just basically making use of already the available diagram to do this analysis. So university, non-university, less skilled over here, more highly skilled over on this side. Now the wage gap already exists. W3 is higher than W1, as you can see. Now the wage gap has increased over time, W4 for the university grads, and then the wages have dropped to W2 for the non-university grads. So W4 to W2, that is a larger wage gap. Why is this so? So we are going to explain why. Now this is not the complete answer. I don't pretend that we are going to be able to point out all reasons today in this answer. No, it is not a complete answer, but it is good enough for your examination purposes. Okay, the reality is probably a bit more complex than the answers I am giving here, but these answers are already pretty comprehensive and definitely good enough for your examination purposes. So let's start off with the diagram because it sort of gives us the overview. The demand for university grads, as you can see here, is increasing a lot more than the demand for the non-university grads. So that is one big reason. The second big reason is the supply for the non-university grads. They are increasing a lot more than that for the university grads. Okay, so as simple as that, right? So on the one hand, demand is increasing a lot more over here than over on the left side, but on the left side, the supply is increasing a lot more than the supply on the right side. Woo! Okay, and then along the way, we are also going to bring in something about elasticity, which is about the price elasticity of supply, in particular for the university grads. Okay, I have left out the point about the price elasticity of demand in this answer. In part 1, you would have seen me explaining that PED is probably less than 1 for the university grads as well. PED is probably less than 1 for the university grads as well. But here, it is not a very helpful point. It doesn't really contribute to explaining the widening gap. And so where elasticity is concerned, here I'm only focusing on the PES less than 1 for the university grads. Okay, so I'm not focusing on PED less than 1 for university grads here because it's not going to contribute to understanding why the gap has widened. Okay, so let's jump in. So why is the demand increasing a lot more here than over here, and supply and so on? So One reason is because with globalization, you may not have fully learned about globalization at this point in time, but you will. With globalization, it also means we are more open to labor flows. Okay, there's a lot more labor flows moving around the world, and that might have resulted in a sharp increase in the supply of lower skilled workers. Examples I give here: coffee shop assistants and so on, influx of foreign workers. That's This example is really because I'm talking about the unskilled labor market here, but in reality, if it is just the non-university grads, then you have many other occupations, okay, which may be in competition with your poly grads, in competition with your ITE grads, etc., etc., right? Recently, a handyman have been coming to my house to do various repairs, and this handyman, he's not an ITE grad, he's not a poly grad, he's Malaysian, okay, and he is skilled enough to do the job, and what he has done is he has set up a company in Singapore and offering these handyman services, which could have been a job that may be done by some of our ITE graduates, right? So you see this competition going on from foreigners, and that's really part and parcel of the phenomenon of globalization. On the other hand, the supply of skilled labor like biomed scientists increase by a lesser extent. They are not so easily available. You don't have so many biomedical scientists in the world compared to those who can do a handyman's job. And also because there's a lot of intense global competition for such labor, so it's not so easy for Singapore to attract them. Okay, whereas if we are talking about handymen from Malaysia, for example, we don't have to do anything to attract them. They are attracted to us, so they will naturally come. Okay, so as a result, the supply is increasing as well, but not by so much compared to for the non-university grads market. And in addition, supply of skilled labor, it takes a longer time to train up one, and so the supply of skilled labor is more price inelastic than that of over here, the non-university grads. And later on, we will see that this point will contribute to the widening of the wage gap. Now, this is on the supply side. So now we're going to look on the demand side. Again, with globalization, there's freer trade, and economic growth will tend to be more export-oriented. Export sectors are going to grow faster than others, and our export sectors are the high-skilled, high-value added ones, because this is where Singapore's comparative advantage lie. If you have not learned about comparative advantage, just understand it as something like your strengths, right? So this is where Singapore's strengths lie, and because with globalization you got exports booming, then your high-skilled, high-value added sectors are going to be booming in Singapore. While the Singapore economy boom, there will also be higher demand for unskilled labor or the non-university grads, okay, which again, they are skilled, just less skilled, okay. But the demand is probably not going to increase as much, right, as the demand that is for the university grads, okay? Because when we are talking about exports, you are looking at global markets, right? So this demand for the university grads, like maybe programmers, like maybe wealth managers, and so on and so forth, it is actually a derived demand from the demand for our exports, which is pretty global, which is pretty international, right? Whereas if you're talking about demand for handyman services, for example, it is a local demand. It's not a global, international demand, okay? So this is one of the reasons why all this that's happening is going to increase the demand on both sides, but much more so on the other side, right? So increase the market for skilled labor, or in our context here is for the university grads, is able to experience a higher increase in demand than for the non-university grads. Okay, mainly in the domestic sectors rather than in the export sectors. So they mainly serve like your households in Singapore rather than a global market. All right. So these two paragraphs already tells us about the demand supply differences, and then finally putting it all together, the supply of the non-university grads labor will increase more than its demand, as you can see here. Okay, so resulting in a surplus at the original wage W1, downward pressure, so the wages fall from W1 to W2. So I'm analyzing this market first, and then after that I'm going to analyze the other market. On the other hand, the demand for the university grad labor increases to a larger extent from D3, D4, more so than supply S3, S4, right? So this one increased by a larger extent compared to over here, and also compared to its increase in supply. So what's going to happen is you have a shortage at W3, as you can see, shortage at W3, and coupled with a price inelastic supply, so here's where the PES less than 1 comes in, the wages of the skilled labor is going to increase very significantly from W3 to W4. So if you see the W3 to W4, okay, it looks kind of like larger increase than the fall here from W1 to W2. Okay, so the reason why this is increasing by a larger extent than the fall here is because of the price inelastic supply. So the wages increase very significantly from W3 to W4. So all these reasons therefore has widened the gap between the university and non-university graduates. Ta-da! Alright, so these are the answers found in a very small part actually, of the model essays on the Singapore economy book, which contains really 5 A-grade model essays. Okay, a lot of students have said this book very useful for them. Even IB students have actually bothered to buy them and made a good use of them. Alright, okay, so that's all I have for you. I hope this is clear. Please share any comments you wish. Let me know. See you again. Ciao.